after. So if you want to watch it again or share it with anybody on your team, that will be made available. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Jenny, if you could just let me know what you're seeing.
Yep. Okay. Well, keep me posted and then just let me know with you knowing your.
If I could just get everybody to put themselves on mute, that would be lovely. Right. So let me just get set up here. Okay, welcome everyone. First and foremost, a little introduction. Our director is Daniela Parks. Unfortunately, she's not able to join us today. As you've heard me reference, Jenny Louie is our specialist. She's right there waving to everyone. Many of you have probably spoken to her or emailed with her. And then myself, Stacy Swarchek, the coordinator. So I would like to do, I just need to move this out of the way. A land acknowledgement. United Way, British Columbia operates in a vast region that falls within the traditional homelands of 203 First Nations, each with their own distinct languages, governance systems, laws, cultures, and traditions. We dedicate ourselves to a better understanding, respecting, and acknowledging the rich histories of these peoples, their lands, and their waterways as we conduct our work across these diverse territories. So as I said, and I'll just send a reminder again, we are recording this. It will be shared out. We're going to do some updates with regards to WEOG and some reminders. From there, we're going to walk through some practical strategies for supporting your participants. What we're really wanting to do is offer the best success rate possible, and that'll be through engagement, accountability, and performance coaching. We're then fortunate enough to have a guest speaker from Pacifica Treatment Center Society join us later on. And they're going to share some of their learnings from their WEOG placements. They've been with us in round 1 and now round 2. And then after that, we are going to break out into some breakout rooms for discussions for you to share, question each other, and just have general discussions. There will be some questions we'll post for you. And it's informal. So it's just for you guys to chat, share. You don't have to get through all 5 of them. You can pick a few. You might even come up with other things you want to discuss. And then we will come back together and we'll do an open Q&A where Jenny and I will hopefully answer any questions that you have. And so in regards to those reminders I was speaking of, you probably had many emails from myself just reminding about the pre-surveys. And so those are a requirement from each participant prior to their first shift. And even if they have started, just ensure that they are completed. If you don't know where those links are, they are on the checklist, or feel free to reach out to either Jenny or myself and we can resend you the link as well. Post surveys and evaluations are required by each participant that goes through the placements. Even if somebody exits before completing the hours, we still require that. We understand that maybe some people do leave and you can't reach them, but if you can make every opportunity to try and have them complete the post survey, that would be lovely. And the evaluation is done by the organization, yourself, and that is for each and every participant, whether they have completed those hours or not. Oh, sorry, let me go back. One thing, there is a placement update form. Some people are fully aware of that. Maybe we haven't communicated it as much as we should have. It is on the checklist, which I will go over. But this is a form that allows you, if somebody leaves, it notifies the WEOG team that that's happening, as well as it's a secondary form. You fill out one for the person exiting and one for the new placement coming in to fulfill those leftover hours. So we went over this in the first introductory COP, the onboarding, but if somebody is unable to complete their full hours for whatever reason, then it is your responsibility to fill those remaining hours with a second individual. So this placement form just keeps us up to date on who's coming and who's going, and really ultimately tracking those hours. The agency checklist, which I've been referring to, is your go-to kind of resource throughout this entire program. It lists everything from start to finish, and it does include those links that I've been talking about. So the surveys, the evaluation, and placement update form, and other key resources. So I really do encourage you to reference back to it regularly, or reach out to me if you don't know where that checklist is, or if you've downloaded and printed it out, you can't click on it. So feel free, I can resend. It's also on our landing page under agency resources. One thing we're doing this year is a midpoint check-in. This is going to allow us to really touch base and see how things are progressing, give you the opportunity to share successes as well as challenges. Let us know where you are so we can support you. And really just ensure that the placements and the hours are all going to wrap up by February 28th, 2027. So we're going to send this out in the form of a survey by September 14th. And then we ask that all submissions are into us by October the 2nd. Like I said, it's a brief opportunity to tell us how things are going. Reach out to us if you need additional support or to work through any challenges that you might be experiencing. So key program deadlines and requirements. The important date to remember is February 28th, 27th. That is when all the placements and those participant hours must be completed, as well as the funding itself has to be spent in its entirety. So we really encourage you to keep a close eye on your timeline, ensure that those hours and the money is being spent. And if you foresee any issues, reach out to either Jenny or myself so we can work through this. Unfortunately, we don't have the availability for any extensions this round. So we really want to stick close with you, work through any challenges you might have. And then the final report is due 1 month after the program is wrapped up. So that'll be due March 31st, 2027. And we are looking to send out the Word format of that, I believe by the end of September, so that you would have that and know exactly what we will be asking of you. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jenny. She's going to go over some of our key findings in our round one. So Jenny, feel free to step in.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Stacey. And thanks for being part of today. I just wanted to take a quick moment to highlight some impacts from round one, because it really demonstrates that WEOG extends beyond short-term work experience placements. And what we found was across communities, agencies reported during round one, participants moving into paid employment, pursuing education and training opportunities, securing greater housing stability, and developing lasting connections within their communities. The stats behind it is that in round one, we funded 136 agencies across 36 communities in the province. This round, our current round, where you're part of, we funded more at 175 agencies across 67 communities. During round one, 47 agencies were able to provide post-placement employment opportunities, and we had 68% of participants respond that within the next 6 months, they will be moving towards employment or will be employed and or go into an education that will further their employment pathway, which is such a great result, as you can see, compared to kind of the norm of expectations of programs, of employment programs. 68% result is at an excellent point. So we're very, very pleased about that. Organizations that were part of the round one also highlighted broader system level impacts, including increased willingness to hire individuals facing employment barriers, stronger partnerships among community organizations, and improved access to inclusive employment opportunities. These outcomes suggest that, WEOG is contributing not only to the individual participants' success, but also to more inclusive and resilient community employment systems. Now, I just want to point out that we have this information, we have these stats because of the surveys and reports that Stacey had just talked about. So, the reason why we're collecting these surveys from participants and from yourselves, it's so that we can use it in varieties of ways for us to be. It indicates to us when participants begins and ends. So when the participant submits their pre-survey, we know, you have, out of your 3 placements, 1 person has started. It also informs us if there are, any issues. So, when you submit the participant update form, then informs us, someone had left early, and perhaps what the reason is. And then we also get to know when a new person has replaced that placement that wasn't completed. And of course, the post surveys as well as the evaluation indicates to us that a participant has completed their hours. So, it really helps. It's indicators as well as it informs us of issues. And of course, it helps us be able to measure impacts like this. And we pass these information on to the ministry to further advocate for programs and fundings like WEOG. Next page, Stacey. So, based on the direct feedbacks from participants from those surveys, the defining feature of WEOG success is its emphasis on pairing work experience with individualized and barrier responsive support. So those wraparound supports that you are providing along with the work opportunity, this is what's really creating successes for participants. These supports for round 1 included flexible scheduling, transportation assistance, meals, mentorship, coaching, workplace accommodations, trauma-informed supervision, skills development opportunities, case management, community referrals, and employment navigation supports. Agencies consistently identified that these are what was critical to participants' engagement and participants to be able to complete their placements. Next slide, Stacey. And participant survey data also highlighted meaningful growth in workplace readiness and confidence for the participants. So the most significant gains reported in networking, employment readiness, decision-making, and time management, which are all skills that support both immediate employment success as well as a long-term willingness to be able to participate in the workforce. And beyond these kind of like statistics and measurable outcomes, agencies also reported just really transformational personal growth among participants. A lot of participants enter the placements, which you're probably noticing now as you are starting your placements. A lot of them came with limited confidence, lack of employment experiences or stabilities. And these participants from round 1 left with stronger workplace skills, greater self-confidence, and renewed sense of purpose. And the stories that we were shared about participants frequently described about how it increased their independence, to how it connected them to their community, and just greater belief in their ability to succeed in employment settings. So, hopefully we are looking forward to seeing how this current round goes for you and be able to further strengthen our findings from round 1. As we've already heard of your stories that you shared with us about some of the changes that participants are already going through, having started their placements, about a month ago or so. And so, so we're really excited to hear those stories and find out your results through the surveys and the final report at the end. So I know they it is administrative work and it can be time consuming. However, it is really important that we receive them. And I just wanted to share round 1 information to show you why we're collecting and what we are hoping to work towards. So I will pass it back to Stacey.
Thanks so much, Jenny. All right, so now we really are going to get into the main focus of today's meeting. It's providing some practical tools and strategies to helping support each participant to have success within their placements. Over the next few slides, we'll look at recognizing early warning signs, building some participant engagement, coaching rather than managing, improving accountability, and addressing performance concerns. Ultimately, the whole purpose is to create a successful placement for each individual that goes through the WEOG program within your organization. So engagement often comes from small, consistent actions, a warm welcome, clear expectations from the get-go, regular check-ins, and helping participants understand why this work matters and makes a real significant difference to their actual placement. And remembering to recognize progress, especially the small wins. So we've heard constant feedback that the best placements have been those ones that welcomed the individual. You really sat down and discussed like not only what you expect from them, but what they're expecting to get out of this placement, and then connect on a regular basis. Encourage open communication so that there's that clear line of communication, because there's so much going on with these individuals that it really does make them feel at ease. One of the constant feedback I've gotten when I've either had phone calls or attended site visits is that the participants really enjoyed the fact that these placements were less rigid than a regular work environment. A lot of them have been out of work or maybe haven't, but those that have been out of work for a long time remember the rigidness of a job. The expectations are so cut and dry. And with WEOG, we really encourage to meet the individuals where they are. So clear communication is really key. Like I just said, many of these individuals are coming from very, very different starting points. Some may be returning to work after a long absence. Some may have never worked. Many have low confidence. And what you really want to look out for is small issues that could grow quickly. And we encourage, like I said, I'll reiterate it many times throughout this, is clear communication. Offer that support and guidance, because that ultimately is going to make the placement more successful for not only the individual, but the organization. So what I like to think about warning signs is almost to look at it like a traffic light. Some things simply need monitoring, while changes in attendance, communication, or motivation are a signal that you need to check in with the individual. And if you're seeing some sort of conflict or a decline in work quality, that really is a sign to act quickly. And again, that's where you want to step in and have those conversations with the individual so that you're seeing it, but you're also able to like have an open conversation as to what could be causing these warning signs that maybe, things could go off the rails for the individual. And a lot of people have had this, but the communication wasn't open at that point. So some people have left, and that's where we saw in round one, that maybe they were so used to the fact that in past work, you're not showing up the way you're supposed to, you're going to be let go and such. We want to encourage you to have a less rigid look at this, meet the individuals where they are, and have those regular check-ins. And there's a huge important difference between managing and coaching. Managing tends to tell somebody, what to do and how to solve the problem, or whereas coaching is really questioning the individual, in this case, the participant, and together working on a solution. Where we're still here, and you obviously will have expectations of the individuals and the placements and the work they're going to be doing within your organization, but helping them build the skills and the confidence that they will eventually hopefully take into future employment is what this program is really about. So one simple framework that you could use, the acronym is GROW. So goal, what is it that you're trying to achieve within that role for the individual? Reality, what's happening right now? What challenges are they experiencing? What is it that they're doing well? Options, what could you try? Is there anything that you could discuss that can make the situation better, or any support that could be offered, and a way forward? What are the next steps? What will you do, and when will you check in to see how things are going? The participant should really leave the conversation feeling like they have a plan, not just instructions. And like I said, clear communication, but also active listening is really important to these individuals. And why that matters is that these conversations build trust, they increase self-awareness for the participants, and help them develop the skills that they'll need for long-term success. One of the strongest themes that both Jenny and I have heard from round one was the flexibility of WEOG. And I have had conversations in the past with round one, and I've even had some current conversations with some agencies that are currently doing WEOG, that the flexibility is the strength of this. So we encourage you to meet the individual where they are and then reassess and rethink the roles. Oftentimes, you've created these roles, you've posted them, you've done your recruitment, and then you've met the individual, and maybe they have different strengths or different interests. You have full autonomy to change those roles so that it's a win-win for both you as well as the individual. And then if that is the case and you want to slightly pivot and change the role, just please reach out to Jenny and I. Keep us updated on that. But like I said, those have been the biggest successes when you or the participant or together realize that pivoting to make it a more successful placement that works for not only the individual but the organization, you're going to see larger success rates. Another thing is addressing those difficult conversations, and it's much easier if it happens earlier. So keep it really simple. Describe the specific behavior that you're seeing, explain the impact, ask for their perspective, and then agree on some next steps. The goal isn't to avoid accountability. It's really to combine accountability with curiosity and then support that individual. And so a successful placement isn't just about getting somebody started and then checking back once those hours are complete. Keep the conversation going throughout. So we really encourage, like I said, do constant check-ins, give feedback, let them know how things are going, make adjustments if needed, agree on clear actions moving forward, and then follow up. Small adjustments could make all the difference to not only the individual, but the role and the impact they're making for your organization. And then recognition. It's huge. We all know that. And so for these individuals, it's going to have such an incredible impact for motivation, for somebody that's really needing to rebuild their confidence. It's celebrating, their attendance or them taking initiative in something in the work they're doing that maybe wasn't asked, teamwork and the new skills that they're developing. At the same time, remember that behavior may be telling you something. And so, in these individuals' lives, the communication is really important because we don't know, but it could be transportation, childcare, finances, personal circumstances that can affect how they show up. So those check-ins and just really meeting the individual where they are is huge for making these placements impactful and successful for the individual. And I will stress again, recognizing the behavior is key to understanding how to support the individuals. Small actions, big impact is what we have noticed in round one, and we hope to see even more in this round two. I am now going to stop talking, and we are so lucky, like I said, to have a guest speaker, Christy Peterson from Pacifica Treatment Center Society. They were a partner in round one, and again in round two, and so graciously offered to join us and provide feedback in the things that have offered learnings and experiences that they wanted to share with you, and how they provide ongoing support throughout the placement and the approaches they've taken to make these placements successful for their participants. So if you are here, Christy, I will stop sharing my screen.
I am here. Let me see if I can share my screen. Oh, there we go. Okay, can you see that?
Nice. We do.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm hoping that I don't repeat too many of the things that you said because I feel like we're on a similar wavelength, but yeah, let's get started. So we're going to talk about a little bit about participant retention and some of the experiences that we've had. I guess I'll just introduce myself first. So, my name's Kirsty Peterson. I'm the executive director with Pacifica Treatment Center Society. I guess by trade, I'm a youth employment specialist. I've been doing that for about 20 years. And so most of my career I spent working with young people between the ages of about 15 and 30. And the last 10 years or so has been in a management leadership capacity. So I've been doing this kind of like employment stuff for a while. I'm also the vice president of Aspect BC, which for those of you who don't know is the Association of Service Providers for Employability and Career Trainers. Check us out. So I guess where the way I'm framing this, and I'll talk a little bit about what we do at Pacifica and sort of why retention can be an issue for us and some of the things that we've done to be able to address it. But the work sort of that I've done primarily over my career is often with people who are furthest removed from labor market. So often it's people with mental health and addictions. I've done work like with the Fraser Health mental health and addictions team in Surrey pretrial. Ask me someday about some of those stories if you want some interesting anecdotes about working with people who are far from labor market. Lots of stuff around people getting their first jobs, like career disruption, that kind of work. So since I've been with Pacifica, we've started doing a lot of work around employability, and this is one of the programs where we've started to do that. We also recently did a study with Adler University working on basically trying to demonstrate the positive impacts that employment can have on people's recovery and mental health. And in both at Pacifica and also in my previous experience, I've noticed that it's really the supported and well-targeted employment that has positive impacts on mental health. But if we just sort of throw somebody into a job, it doesn't always have the same effect. And so today I'll be talking a little bit about some of the things that Pacifica sets up into place to make these successful. Because often if we're just throwing somebody into a job without setting them up for success, it can in fact have the opposite effect than what we're obviously intending by some of these programs. And I just also wanted to just sort of, I don't know if he's here, but introduce Curtis, who is our peer programs coordinator. And so Curtis is the person who supervises all of our WEOG interns, is what we call them. And so what we've done with our program is we've actually set up one point of contact, which I'll talk a little bit about. And so what he focuses on really is our interns. He focuses on our alumni programming, our volunteer programming, and then what we call integrative wellness. So we have a whole bunch of other wellness type programs, which kind of fits in with what some of the WEOGs do day to day. So in terms of what Pacifica does, just for those of you who don't know, so we're in residence treatment, a substance use treatment center. And so we've been doing this for a while. We serve adults 19 plus, and we actually have 35 people that live in residence with us. And so they're here 24 hours a day. We have a biopsychosocial model, and all of our WEOG participants are actually former graduates of our program. So every single one of them has gone through the full 84 days, moved out of Pacifica, has graduated, and wants to come back and contribute to the community. And so what that means is that they're all in early recovery, and they're also learning to have a different type of relationship to our center. So that kind of complicates the relationship and the onboarding pieces. And so what they're doing in their internships, and so we call them interns fairly specifically to differentiate them from staff, but what they're doing is they're helping to support clients, they're supervising outings, they're organizing social activities, they're delivering or supporting with group programming, and they can run meetings. And many of these tasks are transferable into careers as peer support workers in the substance use sector. So some of the skills that we're trying to teach them are things like boundaries, like appropriate workplace boundaries and ethics, communication, conflict resolution, and then like more specific skills like mental health, first aid, things like that. Some of the risks that we run into in employing these types of groups are relapse is actually a huge one. And often I would say that when we lose clients for in these sort of continuing care employment programs, it often is due to relapse. But other big risks that would be transferable to sort of all organizations would be things like overwhelm, burnout, taking on too much responsibility at one time. In our center, it can be things, and I can see this happening in other places where it's like making exceptions to the rules or feeling like suddenly they've been given this responsibility, and so they'll decide to make an executive decision about something, right? And so there's a lot of coaching that can happen around those types of skills where we want them to be to take initiative. We'd love for them to develop that skill, but really learning like what the boundary of taking initiative is and coaching things like that. And then pretty much the biggest one that we're dealing with in terms of risk is usually anxiety. And in my experience, that tends to be one of the key barriers that people find as they enter into new employment. So that's kind of what we do. So I'm just going to sort of go through four sort of key things. So what we do before the placement, how we support people in the early days, how we provide ongoing support, and then what we do when things go sideways, because they do, and they will. So what we do first is our sessions. We're really trying to make them like as welcoming as possible, and so we always hold an orientation session first. So we don't jump straight into interviews. We really hold it as we would like a regular kind of employment program. The orientation sessions give people an understanding of what the program does, what the eligibility is, kind of what the expectations are, what the hours look like, how this is one of the main questions people always ask is how this is going to impact or not impact their employment or their income assistance or PWD. So that's a huge one. They really need to understand that. Huge anxiety around it, as I'm sure you all know. We then move into an interview process. In our interviews, we actually started this and sort of made an abrupt change. So we kind of started focusing a little bit more like we would do a normal interview. And we started it out asking these questions that we would ask our normal staff that are coming out from their undergraduates or sometimes their master's degrees, and we would ask them things about inclusivity and trauma-informed care, and that didn't work because obviously a lot of these participants didn't know what we were talking about. And so we modified our interviews to really focus more on fit, what their goals are, and really what their motivation is for why they're interested in this type of a program. And so we've really moved away from the skills, education, and experiences because the whole purpose is for us to be able to help them develop some of those things through the work experience placement. We're also really clear in advance about what it is that they will need to do. So they need to understand, and there's flexibility around this, but like what their tasks will be, what their schedule will be, where they will go, what sorts of things they'll need to do, and making sure that they understand that this is a temporary placement and it's not a job is super important in the beginning so that they understand what to come to expect. We also really look at identifying some of those practical barriers before they start. So like, are they going to have trouble with transportation? How are they going to get here? What sorts of things are going to prevent them from showing up at their best once they get here? So childcare, we look at other appointments and try to make sure that we're able to schedule their time in a way that both respects like self-care stuff that they need to do as well as the needs that we have for them on site. And that really also includes providing information about things that may seem super obvious, like how to get in the door at a treatment center. It's actually oddly stressful figuring out how you're going to get in, even because our front door is locked. And so we really try to remove some of those barriers. Where are they going to park? Where is the bathroom? Because again, it really comes back to that anxiety. And so I'll share a really super embarrassing personal story, but I started a new job about 4 years ago, I guess. And for the first 4 days, I didn't know where the washroom was. and I didn't ask, right? And so I'm like a professional. I was in a director level position. It's super ridiculous to even actually say this, but I didn't want to, like, I felt like I should know already. And being somebody in a leadership position, having to ask where the bathroom was just felt like the worst, right? And so if you think about that and you compare that to somebody who's at at a point in their career that they should be able to just ask that question, and you think about that and compare it to the people that we're bringing in, sometimes it's those really simple things that can create a huge barrier for people, right? And so 3 days in, I finally asked and figured it out, and the rest of my journey was a lot more comfortable at that job. But we try to address a lot of these things in advance so that we can deal with some of that anxiety. So in addition to that, we also try to match participants as much as we can to a role that fits their interests and abilities, their capacity, and what their goals are. And one of the ways that we've done this is through developing special projects for our participants. So they've got sort of their regular things that they would do day to day. So, taking somebody to the dentist, that sort of thing. But we also have some special projects around, like one is working on a community garden where one of them sort of organizes that. And we've got one who's doing special outreach events. And so they're coordinating what we'll do at Recovery Day. And there's somebody who's coordinating a volunteer barbecue. And so that gives them like an element of fairly risk-free responsibility so that they're able to feel ownership over something, but it's also not going to risk our overall operations. Because if I was to say, well, okay, we'd like to give them some leadership opportunity, and I say, why don't you be in charge of, I don't know, payroll or something, was probably the worst possible option that I could give them. And then nobody gets paid, then that's a really big problem. But creating these mini projects that they own allows us to do that without risk. One of the other things that I learned really early on is that making sure that the rest of the team understands the difference between work experience placements and staff is really important to set them up for success. One issue that actually came up for us, we're a unionized environment, and so quite early on there was some major confusion from our staff about whether these people were union members or whether they should be union members. And so it created a lot of questions, both for the staff and for the participants. And so this second round, we also did an information session for employees to help them understand what are the responsibilities of the WEOG interns, what are the things that they're actually also not allowed to do because it would breach our collective agreement, and how can staff really work to support them in a positive way? Because when you don't do that, some of the things that could happen is it could like create unrealistic expectations of what the interns are supposed to be doing. It could set up poor boundaries where maybe staff are asking questions of the interns that maybe they're not supposed to be, or talking to them about things that aren't helpful, or just generally modeling behavior that you wouldn't maybe model to a participant if you viewed them that way in the first place. And it also helps for the WEOGs to understand the parameters of their role as well, which is again why we call them interns, to avoid confusion with our regular staff. Some of the things that we learned, like by not doing it right the first time, is that initially we had issued keys and fobs to our building to everybody, and then kind of realized like actually they're participants, maybe they shouldn't have access to all of the places. Those things are really hard to fix after the fact, which is why the preparation is so important. And yeah, and of course that also confused, well, it confused everyone. It confused all of our staff, it confused all of our interns. And so the second round go around, we really made sure like people understood kind of where they were at and what they were supposed to be doing. So one of the things that I often said to young people when I was working with them, like on the front lines, is that the first 2 weeks is typically the riskiest time of any job. And it's actually really the first couple of days where people often decide whether something's going to work, or where they're not necessarily right, but that's kind of where they decide when something's not going to work for them, and they often will not give it a chance to, or when they don't anyway. So that time is really critical. And so what we do is we make sure that we assign one consistent contact person, and so that's Curtis. We also run our program in 2 cohorts rather than bringing them in as individuals. So they actually have a team of people to lean on, which we find is quite helpful. So on day one, we hold an onboarding session, and participants there actually, similar to other employment programs, which many of you are probably familiar with, they'll actually develop their own team code of conduct. And so that really helps because then they're taking ownership over what their set of rules are. And of course, if they forget things, then we can, like the facilitators or the coordinator can fill that in. But usually they just come up with their own stuff. And so even like last time, they even all said, well, we don't want to have our phones on us during our placements because that's something that we can all agree is not going to be helpful for us. And so that really allows them to just take ownership over how they interact with the placement. We also wrote some training funds into our proposal, which was helpful. And so that basically allows us to train them in some of the skills that are more relevant to them. And so some of them are group-based, like we did mental health first aid. Some people are interested in doing like smart recovery meetings, and so we could train them one-to-one. Some people are doing the peer support worker training or de-escalation training. And so that really helps us to be able to show them that we take an interest in what happens to them after this and also develop skills for them to use during the placement. So I already mentioned the projects, but some of the examples of those projects, again, allowing them to explore the activities that they're interested in is we have planning committees. We're letting them organize some social events. So like they've designed a Mario Kart tournament that they're doing on Fridays, which is a lot of fun. And so it really sort of combines their own interests to being able to learn skills of coordinating and developing things for others. In fact, actually, one of our staff called in sick today, and so we have a creative recovery program, and I could hear one of our WEOGs in the hallway saying like, "Oh, well, good thing I'm here because I'm gonna just like take this over, right?" And so it really gives them that leadership opportunity to be able to do neat things. Okay, so we also hold regular team meetings, we hold regular check-ins and one-to-ones, and that provides us one of the things, I guess I'm skipping here a little bit, but one of the things that I think is really important that often people struggle with, almost regardless of age or barrier or anything, is receiving feedback. And so that's something that's really ingrained into our program. And so these one-to-ones and these team meetings are a way for us to be able to deliver consistent feedback to them so that it's not like every time they get called to the principal's office, it's scary, right? So we're delivering ongoing consistent feedback all the time. And a good but then the way that we do that is we try to use positive feedback where possible rather than corrective feedback, even when we're delivering corrective feedback. And so I'll give you an example of how we've used that. So we had a participant who this was actually in one of our other, not necessarily this program, but it's a very similar program. And he was not showing up. Like he would show up sometimes, but a lot of the time he wouldn't show up. But one day he showed up and he saved the day and he was there. He was able to fix something that we needed fixed last minute. But we also needed to have this conversation with him about his attendance. And so the way that we ended up approaching it was basically saying to him, look, you came in today and you saved the day. Like you really showed up. So you're able, like, we can see that you're able to show up, that you're able to be a really good team member, you're able to contribute really well to the team. How can we support you to be able to do that more frequently? Because we notice that sometimes, you're sick a lot, or we wouldn't put it quite like that, but like, we've noticed that you're not always coming in, but when you do, it's really good. And so for him, he was able to then actually take that less as a criticism of the fact that he wasn't showing up, but more about, okay, well, we noticed that when you do, you're really good. And so what is it that we can do to help you? So let me see, where am I? So we set individual goals during the one-to-ones and make sure that we're reviewing them. That's really important to help the participants remember what they're supposed to be working on for when they forget, because they often will forget what they're supposed to be working on. And then one of the other things that I find really important is with these goals is making sure that they're really individualized. So it's not just about like, I mean, making sure that you're on time, I guess, is something. But like we have this one participant, for instance, that when she first started, she says, I've always had trouble working with people. Actually, the way she put it was like people that I don't respect. So I have to have leadership that I respect, because if I don't, it's not going to go well. And so early on, that sort of created a conversation where we set that as a goal. Well, your goal here is going to be to learn how to work with people that you maybe don't automatically get along with, right? And so because that sort of has followed her along as we've worked with her, it's actually quite funny because it was a conversation that happened with me. And so when she gets back into that pattern, I just like, all I have to do is raise an eyebrow at her now, and she'll be like, I know that's what I'm supposed to be working on, right? And so that actually helps anybody from having to say anything because she already knows. And so you can like, the conversation could literally be like, I don't need to talk to you about this because I know that you already know. And then they will begin to come up with some of the strategies themselves. Much easier than having to have a surprise conversation about how they're being a jerk all the time to the people around them, right? That's much more challenging. So, yeah, so just really helping them to hear the feedback in a positive way, even when we need to change something. Okay. So once they've made it through the first little while, we begin to shift our focus. And for in this part, we're really looking at like building confidence. And I think some of the key parts that we're really trying to reinforce is we want them to feel like they're succeeding. And in some ways, it's like whether they are succeeding in a way that we expected them to or not, we want to help them find a way to feel like they're succeeding, to understand the value of what they're doing, and to be able to bridge the difference between what they're doing today and what they envision themselves doing tomorrow. Because if they can't make that connection, they're going to have a hard time staying engaged, and staying in the program. So, I mean, we all know that lots of people are going to be showing up with limited work experience. But really what we're trying to do is give people guidance and then also give them some space to be able to try things on their own. So yeah, so I guess I would go sort of back to the projects, like just giving them that opportunity to, okay, like what is interesting for you? What do you think, you could do next? Or how can we help you to sort of like help us help you kind of thing? Because we're really looking at helping them develop their own problem solving skills. So we don't want to jump in every time and tell them exactly what to do, but to give them a little bit of agency as much as possible. Um, I think I just want to touch one more thing on feedback that I found is really important with people, especially when you're working with somebody who's fairly new or returning to the workforce, is around not how we deliver feedback, but like, no, I guess it's how we deliver feedback. So oftentimes, and this is coaching that I give my staff, they will tell people, good job, right? Like, you did a really good job there. Way to go. I'm really proud of you. Things that are nice to hear, but super vague and actually don't give them any information about what it was that they did that we want them to continue or to repeat doing. So one of the things that's also super important is when we're providing the feedback to actually attach it to a skill, not just like, yes, you did well, but you did well at this. So you are super good at engaging with people. People feel very safe when they're around you, and your tone and your body posture and body language is really conducive to building rapport and relationships with clients, and that's a real skill set. Is really specific feedback that they can then take with them, as opposed to, hey, I've noticed that you're really good with clients, right? So that they know exactly what it is. Or if they have lots of great ideas, talking to them about how that worked and engaged with the team, tells them not. So there's two reasons that this is important. One is it's super helpful for their resume. It helps them describe their own strengths later, but also it tells them what behaviors that you value and that you'd like them to continue bringing to the table, which if you're just saying good job, they don't know specifically what it is. Let me see. And then I guess one of the other pieces is that where we like to start them a little bit slow, to try to decrease some of that anxiety. As they get more comfortable, we try to give them a little bit more responsibility. And so an example, one of our WEOGs was, who had been a client here. started taking initiative, and she was, I can't remember what it was, but she was like posting these like little tip guides around the building for other clients, like for the in-residence clients to be able to understand. Like one of them was like about the doctor day and how that works and stuff. And so we noticed that she was really good with being able to communicate information to other clients. And so we, she actually kind of came up with the idea, but she ended up developing a chore orientation program. And so now she runs the chore orientation program once a week for new clients. And so that's a way that she can really take information that or knowledge that she has that's unique to her, and take some of that initiative and be able to apply it in a different way. Okay, sorry, just a moment here. So, okay. Next. So this is a real picture of the manager of programs, Adam. Um, And this is one of the things that he says. He's like, "Oh my God, they did what in a residential treatment center? Crazy things happen sometimes." Um, but when things happen, and they do, one of the biggest things that I've really found, and this is again something that I often tell my staff, I think sometimes, with the intention of maybe being trauma informed, we can let things slide. For people, sometimes we want to avoid conflict with them. Maybe we don't want to make them feel bad, or we think, oh, maybe it's not such a big deal. But as has been mentioned before, the early engagement is super important. And so often the things that maybe we don't pay attention to, or like somebody misses a day. In fact, this happened to one of my staff recently, where one of our participants from another program missed a day, and then the response was, well, maybe I didn't give them the right schedule, or maybe it could have been, I won't worry about it, right? And so the coaching that I gave to the staff was, well, but what, something could have happened, right? Like, we don't know if something happened. We also don't know if it's something that's relatively minor, and us reaching out to them could actually encourage them to come back. But, maybe they're not, because we're not reaching out. And so it's better to actually deal with it than to try to wait to see if things improve. Um, Sometimes we're like worried about, pushing too much or being intrusive or that kind of a thing, but the early outreach can make a really big difference. So an example, like, somebody could miss their bus, for instance, right? And maybe they've lost a job before for showing up late or for not showing up at all. And so, and sometimes it's things that are actually their fault. Like maybe they missed their bus because they slept in, or maybe they missed their bus because their bus just didn't show up. My bus has been known to do that before. And so maybe it's actually not their fault, but the going again back to the anxiety, that's often what the issue is. And so if we just reach out then that can prevent them from missing more shifts because they're feeling anxious about coming back. So really we're trying to make sure that they're not, like, a big piece is trying to help them understand that they're not in trouble, and to really ask questions with curiosity. Um, and just checking in if everything's okay. And, like, is there anything that we can do to support you? Um, and sometimes it is, right? Like, especially in an environment, again, like a treatment center, something could have happened on their last shift that maybe was stressful, maybe it was triggering, maybe it was hard for them. And if we're not paying attention to that, that can make a difference as to whether they feel safe or comfortable or whatever coming back. One of the things that often comes up as well is just making sure that we're not making assumptions about people's motivations, or sort of like what the behavior is all about, but really coming in and asking first. Again, we're in a super unique environment, but it's really easy for people to kind of go straight to, oh, they've probably relapsed, right? When things aren't working. And that can be really dangerous to suddenly jump in with, I guess, with like a diagnosis of what the problem is, when we can really just ask and try to help them out. So I think, I mean, ultimately, what we're really looking for is to support where we can, to make the decisions with the participants where we can. So to ask them, um, what will support them best. They're likely to be more successful if they can feel like they own part of whatever the strategy is. Um, and I want to go back to sort of where I talked about in the beginning around the planning and notifying staff and making sure that people understand that they're not staff. In the same way, we need to really look at like intervention around issues differently with participants than we're looking at staff. So where with a staff, they are showing up late, it might start with a conversation, like, and hopefully it would start with a supportive conversation, but it'll more quickly turn into this is becoming a problem conversation, and it may turn into like some sort of like a performance improvement plan, those sorts of things. Those are less, in my experience, less likely to be that successful with people who are reentering work. And so we're quite strategic about how we use like written agreements and those sorts of things because they're less successful usually in this environment. So we're really looking at going developmental and supportive rather than disciplinary as much as possible. Because what we're aiming for obviously is gaining experience. And if they're coming in constantly worried that they're in trouble, they're actually not learning anything, which is not that helpful for them or us really. And sometimes we have to let people go, or they aren't able to participate any longer in the program. And so on our end, we try to handle that in a way where it's a transition as much as possible. So they're no longer able to participate in this program for some reason. What's your next best step in order to ensure that you're still working towards some of those goals that we've set up early on in the program? Okay. Okay, so just to recap, so setup is important, making sure that their expectations, staff expectations, your expectations fit kind of with what we're looking for, and that the supports are there before they start. Making sure that we're connected, even when somebody it's starting to look like things are going well, they still really benefit from those connections, touch points, goal reviews, and ongoing feedback all the time because people just hate feedback so much that the more we can accustom them to it, the better or the more successful they'll be. And then I guess just my last part about just stepping in early. Don't leave it. Every time we've left it, it hasn't gone. Every time we've left it, it hasn't gone well. So I would say always step in as early as possible. And that's it. So thank you. Check us out at pacificatreatment.ca and feel free to add me on LinkedIn if you feel so inclined.
Thank you so much, Christy. That was amazing. Really appreciate that and the work that you have been doing. Been a huge success. We're excited to work with you again. All right, so now we're gonna reconvene back to mine. Just for a moment. What we are going to do now is move into some breakout rooms. So this is really going to be an opportunity for you guys to discuss and share some ideas. Maybe some of you have already started and can provide some insight like Christy shared with us. Maybe some of you are just in the recruitment phase. This could be your first time doing WEOG, like Christy, could be your second time. You're in round 2 and you might have some valuable information. You can answer some questions. Jenny is going to post this discussion starters in the chat. So if you want to take a snapshot that you can take into the breakout rooms, that would be great. This is super informal. It's not a matter of getting through all 5. It could be picking a few that you wanted to talk about. It could be other topics or questions within your group that you want to discuss. So like I said, choose 2 or 3 questions that you could talk in these groups. We'll split you out for a while. At this point, we'll stop the recording. You guys will just talk and then we'll reconvene. And if anybody wants to share some of the discussions that you had within that group, that would be wonderful. And from there, we will open up to questions that Jenny and I will take and hopefully be able to answer any anything at that point. So we're going to break you off for, I think, about 20 or 30 minutes. There's quite a few of you. So we're trying to put about 4 or 5 people in a group so that there is ample time for you to each have questions and have a really valued conversation. So I will see if I can do, I have never done the breakout, so bear with me.
Sorry, it seems like, so unfortunately I can't upload files on chat, but I was able to put a screenshot, and it looks like it is a PNG image file. For me, when I click on it, it opens, but it looks like if you right click on the 3 dots, you can also download. But I think some people might not be able to access it. So if anyone has any success, let me know, or like if you can let me know if you're.
No, actually, it says that it's restricted to download.
Oh, really? And you can't even click it to open? Stacey, do you mind just putting the questions back up on the screen? And if I'm so sorry, folks, if you don't mind just taking a screenshot of it. Yeah, we thought that we can upload files, but our Zoom is restricting us from uploading files. So, yeah, Stacey, can you put up the questions back up?
You bet. Just one sec.
Yeah, I think we can just take a screenshot by ourselves. Is it the same?
Sorry about that. So we'll give a couple minutes for people to do that.
Yeah.
And Stacey, I think we can do 20 breakout rooms.
Okay, that sounds good.
We had them, yeah. So yeah, we'll as Stacey mentioned, this is not something you have to go through all of it. These are just some discussion starters. So if there's anything else that you would prefer to chat about instead, please do so. But we just wanted to give you an opportunity for you to be able to share your experiences and kind of get learnings from each other through this breakout. So yeah, I think Stacey, we can do the breakout room now.
Perfect. All right.
And yeah, no need for anyone to record anything or anything like that. Just like we said, it's an opportunity for you to chat with other agencies that are going through the same thing or similar things.
Right. I think this. I don't normally know. I guess I just watch a clock. It didn't give me an option.
I'm gonna